Why it's become so important to us as teachers at Maysville? In December 2009, January 2010, Mr. Boehner came to me and he said, "Hey Cindy, will you sign this MOU so that we can participate in this initiative called Race to the Top?" Well, okay, so I take the final scope of work back to my people so that we can look it over. And really the only thing that our people had a problem with, we were starting to see value-added data tied to evaluations. So that was a sticking point with a lot of our people, and it's not because value-added is not good, it's because we didn't know enough about it. So, to make a long story short, we signed the MOU. As you know, Ohio is a Race to the Top district, so as of right now, we do not have in our contract or our formal evaluation value-added data. But we know by signing on to Race to the Top, that's coming. So it's in our teachers' best interest to understand what this means to them. Also, I was asked to sign an MOU so that we could be part of the Ohio Appalachian Collaborative. And right now with the Ohio Appalachian Collaborative, we've received a grant called TIF, Teacher Incentive Fund. So our district is eligible to receive a lot of money to start rewarding teachers based on student achievement. So like Monty said, we have a TIF group, and it's not all administrators. It is mostly teachers with some administrators where we're sitting down, we're trying to come up with a plan. How are we going to pay our teachers based on performance? It's not actually, we still have our base salary. This is going to be above and beyond our base salary right now. So we understand that 50% of our plan, when we roll out the dollars, is going to have to be based on student achievement. So right now, really our only measure for student achievement is our Battelle SOAR results, our value added. So we've been working really hard to get that plan together. I think we're finally getting where we need to be. Hopefully, let's do the 16th, right, Tom? So hopefully we're getting very close on that. So it's in our teachers' best interest to start learning to be able to read their value-added reports. So like I say, remember, 2008, all I know, yellow, did what I'm supposed to, red, no, green, good. So if you look up there, in 2008, I had 85 students tied to my name. Before we go there, I'm going to talk about linkage for just a second, because next week, our entire middle school, we will get together with our principal and we will actually link our students to our names. So for example, if I have a co-teacher, so when I do my linkage, when I do the percentage, I have 50%, he has 50%. So tied to those students' names, 50% of the time it's with me, 50% is with him. And something else, my other 7th grade teacher, we work very closely. We do a lot of station teaching, so our kids are mixed all the time. Even though their schedule might have my name, she's with them 50% of the time also. So when we do our linkage this year, this is going to be a first for us. We're going to do 50-50 her and I. So because she sees my students 50% of the time, and I see her 50% of the time. So we actually take part in the linkage process. We make sure we have the right start date. For example, if I have a student that started in December, there's a little box on there, pull-down menu, where I actually have to put their start date. Okay? So we actually have a process. We are sure, we're buying in, that our names are linked to the right students for the right amount of time, which I think helps. I had 85 students tied to my name. And I don't try to be a statistical genius, because I'm not. But this is what I can understand from my report. I can see that there that my students, this group of students, their mean predicted score should have been about a 426. Well, if you look, their actual mean score for that group of students was a 431. So if I take the difference between those two, if you look in the teacher assessed column, it's about 5. So then we go to the next column where it says standard error. And I know the Battelle, we go 2 above, 2 below. So if I double 1.8, I get about 3.6. Well, I know 3.6, if you look at my teacher effect, 5.1 is going to be above 3.6, so I know that I did a good job. I moved my kids. I was green. Green is good. Remember, green is good. So I was happy with that. So then we scroll on down here, and you're going to see a graphical display of that information. You see the low, the middle, the high kids. Those were, my kids were put into groups based on previous test scores, 6th grade OA, 5th grade OA. So they were put in groups based on their previous test scores. Now, what you don't see, with this report, I did a list of kids. So I know the kids that were a 1. I know the kids that were assigned a 2, and I know the kids that were assigned a 3. So I actually know what kids they're talking about in this report. Can you scroll down just a little bit?
The tell length.
Yes. The tell length. They assigned the numbers 1, 2, 3. Yes. So if you look now I can actually look at my lowest group of kids, and I know who these kids are. If you look at their standard error, 3.8, and I double that, I'm going to get about 7.6. So I know my 5.7 falls in that yellow range. So that group of kids were yellow. I did what I should have done with my lowest group of kids. If you look at the middle one there, and I double my standard error, I'm going to get about 5.8. Again, 0 falls in that yellow band. So with my middle kids, I did what I should have done. If you look at my highest group of kids, I had 35 kids assigned to 3 in that high group. So if I double my standard error and get 6.2, you see that actually my high kids did better than expected, so that group was green. So I'm yellow, green with an overall rating at the top of green for 2008. So now we're in 2009. 62 students are tied to my name this time. If you look, their mean predicted score on the achievement test was about a 425. Their actual mean score was about a 440 with a difference of about 15. So if you look at my teacher effect, 13.8. So I go to my standard error and I double that. And as you can see, I was really green this year. My students performed really well this year. So remember, green is good. All for that. So again, you have the graphical display. Again, you can look and you can figure out what group of kids did what. If you look this year, my lowest group of kids, they were really green this year. Last year they were yellow. Well, guess what? In 2009, I had a co-teacher. So did that co-teacher have some effect? Were we able to break our kids into smaller groups and do more with that low group of kids? You wonder if that had an effect. So that was one of the questions I started asking myself. Again, my middle kids, if you figured that out, they're consistently yellow. Again, my middle kids are yellow. Did what I should do with it. And again, my high group, green. Okay? So now, I'm seeing a trend. My middle kids are still yellow, still doing what I should do with the middle group. My low kids, possibly because of co-teacher, improved from yellow to green. My high kids stayed. Okay, 2010. Remember, I've been green the last 2 years.
Pretty good.
2010, there's that NDD.
Oh.
Not happy with that. You know, it's a meltdown mode. Okay? But what I had to remember, look at that teacher effect up there, 0. What I had to remember is I did what I was supposed to do with all groups of kids. But that still is a little bit hard to stomach.
But that was an eye-opener for her, so I know what she did. She went back and started looking at everything she does and not kind of rest on those laurels of those previous
Because I haven't
years.
changed instruction at all in the last 2 years. I've been green. I haven't changed a thing. So now I look at this, scrolling down some. If you look, every one of my groups, low, middle, high, they're all yellow. If you remember, I went with my low group, I was yellow, green, yellow. Last year I didn't have a co-teacher. Did that have any effect on what I did with my low kids? Okay? My middle group, again, consistently yellow. My high group, yellow. Now, I asked myself, what did I do differently I had to change my instruction. So what I decided to do this year, differentiation. I'm actually trying station teaching in my room with all of my groups, so that maybe some of those kids in the middle group, I can accelerate them a little bit faster than the other kids. And again, this year I have a co-teacher. So we are actually I co-teach with not only my co-teacher, but the other 7th grade math teacher. We mix our kids. We use formative and summative assessments. We mix our kids. We put them in groups based on what our formative assessments tells us. So I will be anxious to see in 2011 what happens to each one of my subgroups based on the change that I made in my instruction. Basically, my journey from where I started to where I came from, I'm actually feeling a little bit comfortable with being able to change my instruction, being able to change things based on the data. Right now, as far as, like I say, we still have our base pay. It's not attached to our pay in any way. But through TIF, next year, we're going to be starting to award monies based on red, yellow, green, building-wide and individual. It's over and above the base. It's not, it doesn't take away from your base in any way, it's over and above your base.
And we have a plan where a teacher could earn up to
$4,000
$4,000 extra dollars based on not only their
Not only-
performance, building performance, committees that are on a whole host of
Professional
things,
development
professional
opportunities,
development.
leading professional development, anything tied to student growth, but 50% of that had to be based off student achievement. I'm going to introduce Mr. Louis Renton. He's our high school principal, and let him give you his take on value added.
Good morning. A lot of this, at the high school level, we have only had value added for 1 year. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things we have with value added. I think it's important to note that you've heard a lot of different things in here today. It is changing culture. And that's really what we're most familiar with in Maysville, is what we've done to change our culture. Normally, when we get asked to go and present in front of groups, it centers around what we've done to change that in our school district. I mean, we were at school 10 years ago that couldn't get a state indicator. At the high school level, we haven't missed one in 3 years now. District-wide, we're effective and right on the cusp of being excellent, coming from reaching like 4 out of 30 or something like that. I don't even remember what it was so bad. And it's been a transformation over about 8 to 10 years. And the good thing is we've sustained it the last 5 or 6 years. And it looks like we're only going to continue to get better. So when we do that, a lot of us talking about culture. One of the things that struck me very early, we weren't here yesterday for any of the presentations, but Lynn was Dr. Dolan, in fact, that had talked about customer satisfaction being important, meeting the student. That's number one with us, period, end of story, is relationship with our kids. Because in this whole grand scheme, they're a pretty big stakeholder, and they have to be satisfied. And when you start that cultural change in your buildings, I also heard mention of poverty and what kids go home to. Well, that's our district. We don't worry about that. All our kids are poor. Okay? Very few of them have internet connectivity when they go home. It's Appalachia, Ohio. Most of our kids come from broken homes. That's the culture that we live in. That 42 minutes in class time to us is sacred. That's where we need the job to be done. Okay? Most of our kids that go to college, Mr. Banner will share with you that it's first generation going to college. Their parents they can't help them fill out financial aid forms or college enrollment forms. That is our responsibility at our school. And that's just how we look at it. Also, I want to, there's Rob or Dr. Dolan, someone mentioned about students taking responsibility for what they learn. That's critical with us. Each unit, each day in class, we take our indicators and we rewrite them into student and parent-friendly language, and we call them I can statements. And they're posted in every classroom. So when a teacher is working on a specific indicator and a kid needs to learn something, by the end of that day or by the end of that unit, that student needs to do some self-assessment. I can, ... because if he says or she says I can't do that, we're not going anywhere. Okay? And that goes along with another huge cultural change is we changed our grading policy in Maysville. And we have a standards-based grading policy where students are only measured based on what they've learned. There's no things like extra credit at Maysville. You can't bring in 8 boxes of tissues and get 14 points on this test or show up at a ball game or a board meeting. We don't do that. Formative assessments are the key to it all. Assess formatively along the way. Okay, leading into that game day, that summative assessment. Homework is no longer taken for granted in Maysville. It's not an option to not do it. Because when we ask our students to do something that's reasonable, they tend to do it. Because they trust us, because of step one, we build relationships with them.